Hello, good evening, and welcome to Michael Coren Live on CTS, and I hope you had a glorious day. Salman Rushdie probably had a good day because he was exploring the delights of Toronto. Salman Rushdie, author of Midnight's Children and, well, Satanic Verses, say that very quietly. I met Salman Rushdie many years ago in Britain. This would be, about 13 years ago. And in fact, I wrote a TV documentary for Channel 4 television in Britain about him, and he was one of the chapters in my first book, a book called The Outsiders. He's a highly intelligent man, very sophisticated man, quite amusing man. Also, I believe, I'm sorry, Salman, with all due respect, an arrogant man too. Now, Shay, a book about Pakistan, Midnight's Children, about India, and other works, very interesting indeed. And then the Satanic Verses. A book, well, you know, a book where he wrote about Islam and about Muhammad to the extent that a fatwa was issued. It was said in Iran by the Ayatollah Khomeini, he should die. Salman Rushdie should die, and any Muslim who killed him would be a glorious thing to do. A bounty was put on his head. He went into hiding. Now, Salman Rushdie had compared the British government of Margaret Thatcher to that of Adolf Hitler. But then he asked for help and protection, and of course it was given to him, and the British police looked after him for a long time. Now things are not so bad. In fact, he crops up everywhere. Oh, there's Salman Rushdie. Bob Rae, during the NDP government of Ontario, brought him into Canada. He's been here several times, and there is now a certain amount of freedom. Tonight, he's reading from his new book at the bookstore at the University of Toronto. Rumors are this one is called Why I Hate Buddha. No, that's a joke. That's not serious. Very, very controversial. Was the man irresponsible? Was he blasphemous, or was he simply expressing his right as a novelist to be free and say what he wanted to say? Salman Rushdie may even be watching at this point. Salman, you remember me. Do call in. 416-203-0302, 905-332-3131. On my left, from the Canadian Muslim Civil Liberties Association, is Anwar Syed. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
Rukhsana Khan has been on the show before. She's an author. She has her books all over the table. We'll talk about them later, maybe. Welcome back to you.
Hi.
On my right is Paul William Roberts, or as I know him, Paul, who is an author and an old friend, and I think one of the finest travel writers actually living today. Welcome back to you. No, not welcome back. You haven't been on before. But no, don't shake my hand. I'm not going to shake your hand. No, get off. Get off. I'll just move my arm in that direction. And Paul McKeever, a civil litigation lawyer from the Ontario Freedom Party. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
What is wrong, Anwar Syed, with Salman Rushdie, a man who was raised a Muslim, raised in India and Pakistan and then in Britain, very good education at Rugby private school and then Cambridge University, who is obviously was not a practicing Muslim in any way. What is wrong with him writing a book that causes offense to some people?
Well, in terms of writing a book, freedom of expression, all this stuff is completely okay. We can't question the man for his imagination or what he chooses to write about or what he thinks is necessary to express. That's all good and well, but there are limits. There are limits to which you should take your topic and stop there, because there is no such thing as absolute freedom of expression. To assume that there is complete freedom to say whatever you want is proven by history, recent history, to not be true, and it's bizarre to try and overstep that line, because if you cross that line, one will invariably have to answer for it. For example, Ernst Zundel. Very rightfully, he was denied permission to speak at Parliament Hill. Why? Because he's a denier of the Holocaust, among many other terrible things that he says. So now the Holocaust is by no means the central point of Judaism. Judaism is a far bigger thing than the Holocaust. But if the Holocaust is questioned, then there's trouble. Similarly, the Prophet of God, Muhammad, peace be upon him, is, however, the pinnacle point of Islam as far as we know it. The Prophet and the Quran. Now Salman Rushdie, attacked the Prophet of God and the Quran, and that is a problem, because this is going beyond what I consider and what most people consider the reasonable limits of what we have in society.
Okay. Lines are open for you. Do you think that Salman Rushdie should be able to say what he wants to say, write what he wants to write? He has apologized in some, well, we'll talk about that a little more later. Should there be a limit to what you can write, or should it be whatever you want to say, whatever you want to write, whenever you want to do so? 416-203-0302, 905-332-3131. I would certainly like to hear from Muslims out there, views on both sides. I know we could have been, and to be quite honest, some shows would have done this, we could have gone out to find those Muslims, and there are a small minority who would say, kill him, kill him, kill him. They don't represent the entire Muslim community by any means, and that would have been irresponsible television. And we're not going to get into that. But certainly if you want to call in and express your views, that is different. I want to hear what you have to say. And from others who believe in complete freedom of expression, I'd like to hear from you as well. Paul William Roberts, seems a moderate proposal, a modest proposal, simply that this is highly offensive. Why do it in the first place?
I think first you have to clarify what he did. And as you say, as a novelist, this is a novel. The offensive sequence is part of the novel. It's a dream sequence, in fact, in which a person who is battling with their faith, wrestling with themselves inside, sees this exemplified in terms of a dream. So there's that sequence. And you've got to remember the sequence of events that led up to the fatwa. And this happened in post-revolutionary Iran. No one has identified the translator who handed to Khomeini this section of the novel. I mean, I think it's really important that somebody be able to see that, because people forget also in that novel there's a rather savage portrait of Khomeini. And Khomeini was, among other things, quite a vain man. You can't issue a fatwa on your own behalf, but it would be very tempting to do it, because there's other sequence. But he never saw the whole book. He only saw the one sequence in a translation that no one's ever seen. Yeah. I mean, I know for a fact, because I was there and I spoke to them, that the leaders of Iran after Khomeini were embarrassed by the event and wanted to dispense with it in a way in which both sides would not lose face. But I mean, it's important to retain a perspective that this was a novel in which one character experiences a dream sequence. You know, this was not an attack on Islam. This was not a deliberate attempt to slight the Prophet. And I think that Salman himself said afterwards that if he'd realized it would have caused such offense, and I think it really only caused that offense to people who never read the book, had never intended to.
But is that true? Because we both know that Salman was told by people, this is going to cause problems. We know for a fact he was told this is going to be a problem. And there are people, Muslims, who have read the book. It wasn't only, I realize there are people who go along with a crowd, but there are others who had read the book and were deeply hurt by it.
It was far more than a dream sequence. It was the whole book in entirety. I mean, the very insidious nature that Salman Rushdie used to write the book, okay? He could not write it as historical fiction because he didn't have a historical leg to stand on. He wrote it as a fantasy novel because that's the only way he could have put across his attack. And it was an attack. It was nothing less than an attack. He used Mahound. He called Muhammad Mahound. Mahound was the European derivative of Muhammad, and it was a very derogatory term. Then he called the names of all of his wives. He even kept them the same. He didn't even bother changing them. Aisha was a prostitute. Astaghfirullah, she was a prostitute in there. You know, and it was not just one simple dream sequence. Even the whole title, the Satanic Verses, is based on a fabricated, forged saying that the Western Orientalists have attributed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, where he was supposed to have revealed some verses that were satanic in origin, where he blessed the three goddesses that the pagan Arabs were worshipping. And that's the whole basis of the Satanic Verses.
Well,
the whole
this is
thing.
a question of history versus faith, and
he was very calculated in what he did. He researched.
No, I mean, if this novel had been written by a Christian or a Buddhist, then perhaps one could say that it was attempted to be deliberately offensive. I think that anyone has a right to question, in any way, the religion in which they were brought up or indoctrinated. From my point of view, it would be indoctrinated, and you're stuck with this as a human being. You're stuck with the indoctrination that was presented to you at birth, and it's something you've had to wrestle with all your life. And it's particularly difficult to wrestle with the religion that you've been brought up with.
But if he had legitimately questioned it, that would have been much more honorable than what he did. He hid behind the veneer of fiction. He hid behind the freedom of speech. And he put it out as a novel because he couldn't stand on
what should happen to the book and what should happen to Salman Rushdie?
Well, what should happen to Salman Rushdie is really nothing. I'm not saying that by any means that him being in the West, the death sentence should apply. I think that is far too extreme, and nothing should happen to the book. It's fine. I mean, there's been dozens upon dozens of things that are derogatory in nature toward Islam, and they're all on bookshelves and stuff. That's not a problem.
Rukhsana, same with you?
I think the book should have been taken off. I really think it should have been banned because it is a blatant, out and out attack on Islam and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon it, and it hasn't got a leg to stand on. To me, it's libel.
When you say in the West, no death sentence, what about if he was in a Muslim country? Would a death sentence apply?
No, because there's a multiplicity of different opinions regarding what blasphemy is and what the penalty should be for blasphemy. For example, in Pakistan, we have there a law whereby if anything derogatory is attributed to the Prophet, death penalty is automatic.
And it's appalling. And we have people falsely accused,
right,
all sorts
exactly.
of things.
It's too many loopholes are possible there for a person to be slaughtered for nothing. Yeah. Now, not to say that the Prophet should be everyone, come on, let's insult the Prophet, God forbid. I'm not saying that at all. But our being here and able to express Islamic points of view is freedom of speech. And without that, you have to take the good with the bad when you're talking freedom of speech.
Paul McKeever, tell us a bit about freedom of speech. I mean, does that mean complete freedom to say whatever you want, whenever you want?
If you're asking me, it does. I mean, as a matter of law in Canada, that's not the case. Although the Section 2B right, as described in the Charter, has been interpreted as being almost unlimited in scope, the courts have retained the power to decide what is a reasonable limit on that freedom. And usually we see quite a bit of freedom still being given to people, whether they be writers or other people expressing themselves, probably untested to a certain degree is hate literature laws. And I think this is a book, and the context here falls into sort of that hate literature framework. Now, what I was interested in knowing, though, Anwar, yes, was that you had mentioned the death penalty wouldn't be a good penalty. So my first question would be, is there a penalty that should be put on an author who makes a blasphemous book, for example, in Canada?
No, not in Canada, no, because blasphemy is something that is applicable only to a certain religion. For example, we had the last temptation of Christ. There was a big uproar about that, and a lot of people thought that was blasphemous. But that is only from a Christian perspective. Of course, we Muslims were offended by that movie as well, because Jesus is a very big prophet in Islam. But for us to say that that person under these laws should be punished for blasphemy is very subjective, because then if we had the Wiccas, the witches, who knows what's blasphemous for them, and you can't put an overall rubric.
Let me go to a break. Actually, I think Last Temptation of Christ should have been banned because it was just so incredibly bad. 416-203-0302, 905-332-3131. Rushdie, yay or nay? Michael Coren, Live CDS, back in a moment. Welcome back to Michael Coren Live. We're talking about Salman Rushdie because Salman tonight is speaking at the bookstore of the University of Toronto. He is in this country. Canada was one of the first, actually, to embrace the man after the fatwa, the death sentence on him because of the book, The Satanic Verses. Bob Rae, who was Premier of Ontario at the time, welcomed him, one of the first government leaders to do such a thing. Now, I've always found the extremes on both sides to be far too meager. One that says he should die, well, that is absurd and morally wrong. The other that says, oh, what did he do wrong? Well, he did things that will be construed as being very wrong. It was terribly insulting. And those in the literary community like to say the pen is mightier than the sword. Well, it's a self-evident truth. If that is the case, then should we not be responsible for how we use the pen? You, Sir Paul McKeever, a lawyer and a member of the Ontario Freedom Party, were going somewhere, so continue going.
Sure. My feeling on this, I was thinking about this issue before we went on the air. What if we took ourselves back to the time of Muhammad? And I don't mean to add to any blasphemy here, but I'm asking you to take into account a hypothetical. What if we had at the time of his preaching said, there's a dangerous person, there's a blasphemous person, let's take away his right to preach. where would your community at this point, where would your religion be at this point?
They did that. They did that.
Yeah, they did that definitely in Mecca, and he had to run. He had to take off and work from other places. But definitely, that's why I'm saying that we are not talking about censorship here. No. We're not saying deny anyone in the country, in the continent, their right to freedom of speech. But there are limits.
Hold on, Roxanne, you said the book should have been banned.
Right. Yes, it should have been banned because it amounts to libel. Yeah, as a person, am I allowed to write a book about a man named Clownton with a wife named Hillary, and accuse him of crimes that he never committed, like pedophilia? That's one thing that Clinton was never accused of. Am I allowed to write this fiction, thinly disguised as an attack? Am I allowed to write this and propagate it and profit from this?
Yes.
Yes.
But when it's so obviously an attack on a person and accusing him of a crime that he never committed and throwing his name in the dirt.
Well, I mean, we're not totally sure he didn't commit it. So.
The real question, though, is, but that's sort of, although that was meant as a joke, that's kind of the point. If there are people who won't believe it, then it isn't a libel. In fact, it's satire. And we have magazines in, for example, the Capital, that take great advantage of hurting people and make many of us laugh nonetheless. Now, the question then is, you know, should we allow them to make a profit on other people's pain? I think in Canada, the answer is yes, not because we like to spread pain, but because we have to tolerate pain if some of that painful talk is actually going to include an innovative thought or something that might spark a change in thought, perhaps a revolutionary one.
The decision that was handed down in the Larry Flint case against Jerry Falwell said that nobody could possibly consider that Falwell had been guilty of these things he was accused of. I think sex with his mother was the charge.
Actually,
I mean, it was a joke.
He won and then lost. There was an appeal that was, it won the first time, the appeal Falwell lost. But it may not have been true, but the degree of insult and hatred that would accuse a man of having sex with his mother, beyond libel, is it not a certain good taste?
It was said in the context of a joke for a start, and an established joke, which was by way of a vodka ad. But the point being that the Supreme Court said, is it possible that anybody could have believed this was true? Mm-hmm. And the answer was no, because we know Falwell to be, you know, whatever it is he is. So
that puts the rights of the person, the creative artist, above the rights of any victim, of any person that's being hurt by that.
I think what it does at that point is
it doesn't say any victim.
Well, doesn't in this case, like all those jokes about Ross Perot's ears, about Elizabeth Taylor's fat, all those jokes about Ross Perot's ears, about Elizabeth Taylor's fat, about all these things, about Oprah, about all these things. Don't you think that that hurts people? What's the point in allowing things like that?
I think the theory there is that, you know, if you make a living through the media, you know, you should take the consequences. Yeah.
But the other thing is that you know, your position was that this was a question of libel. Yeah. And so I think all we've established here is that it isn't libel if people aren't believing it.
Well, hold on, but we haven't established that, because I know more than most actually about Islam, most non-Muslims, but if I would have read the book, I may well have thought, well, this is written by someone who was born a Muslim. Yeah. Is it true? I think a large number of people could and would have believed what was in the book.
In fact, that's why some of the outrage was so outrageous, because it was a Muslim writing this. I mean, it was so ironic. 10 years ago, I saw all the hoopla and I was cringing and thinking, oh, when is this going to blow over? It's just another a time when we Muslims look like a bunch of barbaric idiots, okay? But I was watching Donahue one time, and there was a guy on there. His name was Yuri something or another, and he had written, he was complaining. He was on the podium, and he was complaining. But I wrote a book about the Hajj, and it was making fun of Muslims, and it was controversial, but nobody paid attention to it. And that's just it. Because non-Muslims, hey, we're used to being attacked by non-Muslims. We're used to the Western Orientalists, Nicholson, Hitti, Watt, all of them, Montgomery, all of them were attacking Islam and putting all kinds of Western spins on Muhammad and his message. We're used to that. Nobody put any fatwa on, no death sentence on any. But Salman Rushdie, as a Muslim, he knew exactly where to land the blow that would hurt the most. He knew exactly how to twist it. And a Westerner reading it, they'd say, what's the big deal about this? They don't understand exactly what's going on in that.
Just before we go to the call, I think that there is one other thing, and it's beyond the law. It's beyond, I suppose, the moral issue. It's about social power. Paul and I know Rushdie and the circle in which he works and operates, and it is a circle so far away from Islam and from people of faith, which regards Orthodox Christians, I mean believing Christians, Muslims, Orthodox Jews, as being strange alien figures. They would write something like this and think it was very amusing. Suddenly, these people who are the underdogs bite back. Now, I'm not saying that it's a good thing, but you know what? For once, you have to be responsible for what you write. Isn't that a good thing, though? Isn't it wonderful that, in fact, someone who writes something which is so hurtful has to say, my goodness, what have I done?
I think that's an excellent point. But keep in mind, he wouldn't have to analyze his work if it were never distributed in the first place. And I think we really do need to have that discourse on important works such as this one. I mean, obviously from your position, this is more of an insult than an important work. But what I'm trying to say is other people, I think Paul included, see it more as a person who's questioning his own religion, or at least offering up possibilities to the reader.
But he
I mean,
didn't have to find
as it
himself.
stands in Islam, you cannot write about the Prophet at all.
No, that's not true.
I beg
That's
to differ
Well,
because
I mean, just before the Rushdie case in Iran, a man called, ironically enough, Rushdie, had brought out a book which was a novelization of the life of the Prophet, and that had been banned.
Well, you see, anything where you're mixing fiction with fact, when it comes to Islamic history, you see that is what our whole religion is based on. When we have always been very careful when it comes to history not to mix fiction with fact. Fact has to stand alone because it has to remain pure, and things can get muddled over time.
This begs the question, though, of what is fact and what is fiction. I mean, certainly there are whole hosts of revisionists who would like to tell us different things about World War II and etc. What if, for example, someone discovers or proposes that the Earth actually goes around the sun? Now, at that point, are we supposed to say...
What has that got to do with this?
You know, at that point, are we supposed to say... I just discovered it today. Are we supposed to... No. Are we supposed to say, though, that because that's contrary to church doctrine or religious doctrine, that we shouldn't be allowed to express that opinion? Perhaps it's even...
No, but you see, that dichotomy has never existed in Islam. Islam has always allowed for the free enterprise of ideas and science. It was under Islamic rule that the Renaissance really started, because Islamic scientists had brought it back to the Dark Ages.
I mean, we were going through our barbaric period at that time.
Well, Muslim science.
All right, got to go to break it, and then we'll get to the course, because otherwise we'll just chat all night. It's a lot of fun. 416-203, well, you know the numbers. Marcus and Lou and Robert and Julia and Sienna and the rest of you will get to you as soon as we come in. Honestly, I promise. Michael Coren live, back in a moment. What do those guys talk about in the commercial break? Is it the intricacies of Islam and freedom of speech? No, it's the Atkins diet. Because these guys have just been telling me you can eat all the cheese you... Anyway, it's a bit of a digression, but fascinating. Let's go to Marcus on line 7. Hi, Marcus. Welcome to Michael Coren Live.
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
I'd like to say right off the bat that I think that Bob Rae was a complete idiot during his administration, but one of the things that I was proud of him for doing was being so embracing of Salman Rushdie when he was here. Okay. And I was proud of, Canada at large for being so embracing of him, because I think this whole idea of the fatwa was absolutely ridiculous, and I think that, freedom of speech and expression should be championed in our society. So,
where do you think, I mean, do you believe complete freedom, or is there a limit we should impose?
I think complete freedom, as long as you are not harming anyone physically. I mean, we're all, free-thinking individuals, and we should be allowed to throw out our ideas to the masses and have them be challenged, in a civilized manner.
But Marcus, when you say when it leads to physical harm, Satanic Verses did lead to physical harm. People were murdered, people died in rioting. Hitler's speeches certainly led to a great deal of suffering, more than the suffering imposed by one Nazi's fist. So good writing and bad writing can lead to physical violence. So where do we impose the line, no more freedom?
Salman Rushdie should not be held responsible for the actions that some, unstable, emotionally unstable people choose to partake in. That is their choice. I mean, if they choose, that's, you know, in my opinion, I mean, anger is just a cowardly extension of pain, and that's how they deal with their pain, and they want to, you know, showcase to the world that they are cowards. That is their problem. I mean...
Stay on the line, Marcus, because I want to speak to some emotionally unstable people. How do you react to that?
Well, for one thing, I think the whole idea of the fatwa, if you think about it, it doesn't make sense. When the fatwa came, I thought, yes, that's good. You know why I thought that? Not that I want Salman Rushdie dead, I don't, but that it'll nip this thing in the bud. You see, what has happened with Christ, Jesus, peace be upon him, is that there's been a free-for-all. It started with them showing his face in the movies, you know, the other movies, and then now it came to the Last Temptation of Christ. And that trend has been well observed by Muslims. We haven't liked it either. We thought, wait a minute, let me finish. But the thing is, if Khomeini really wanted to kill Salman Rushdie, do you warn your victim? Do you warn a writer? What's the best way to kill him? It's to let him go to all the publicity events he wants. Let him quietly go, put out a contract on him. Why make it public? Why warn the guy? Why let him go underground and hide for 10 years? And how come we have never even heard of one near miss where he was almost
address what you said about Christianity. You see that the depiction of Jesus Christ in movies, in fact, one of the first movies when they came around was about Christ. Christianity has a very different approach to this. It encourages the depiction of Jesus Christ, always has in great art, unlike Islam and Judaism. Yeah. And also in movies, and they've been wonderful often in proselytizing, in converting people. As a Christian, I have seen endless attacks on Christ by people calling themselves Christians when they're not, and by others, and it's hurtful. But surely if you believe in the truth of your faith, I believe in the truth of mine, you believe in the truth of yours. There comes a point where we have to clash, but at this point we're respecting one another. You'd say, well, do it. It doesn't matter.
Surely it's possible as a Christian to go and see The Life of Brian, for example, Monty Python's Life of Brian, and find it amusing.
Yes, I found it amusing.
There's nothing particularly offensive in there. What I find
it can be amusing and offensive.
What I find interesting is that religion, which I see as an intensely personal subject, dealing with an individual's relationship with God, becomes too much like busybodying. Everyone is concerned about what everyone else is doing. It's as if they're seeking a distraction from, you know, themselves. You know, let other people go their own way. Does it not say somewhere? It's not for us to judge.
I can't speak for Islam, but Christianity does not say it's just about you and God. Your relationship with God, of course, is central. But beyond that, it would be, I've just discovered how to get $1 million for nothing, and I won't tell anyone. It makes me a selfish person. If I believe I've discovered the answer to eternal life and happiness and truth, I have to share it with people. Obviously,
I mean, what if they don't want to share it?
Taking this back, I'd like to talk to Marcus's point.
Yeah.
We have Salman Rushdie, who is an international figure. He's from Great Britain. He's not from Canada. And we saw the farce of Bob Rae embracing him on stage. I forget where it was that he was speaking.
Why is that a farce?
It's a farce because it's hypocrisy, because we have countless examples of other public figures from all over the world who have been jailed and issued death sentences on their lives. We have even a Canadian, Victor Ostrovsky, who was a former Mossad agent, that's the Israeli Secret Service. He wrote 2 books exposing the corruption within the Mossad. And one journalist from the Israeli paper Ma'arif, Joseph Lapid, on CTV's Canada AM live TV, Valerie Pringle was a host. He said, would there be some decent Canadian Jew who would kill him for the government of Israel? And she asked him, isn't that like Salman Rushdie's death sentence? And he said, maybe so, but this is different, because anyone who betrays the Mossad betrays Israel and should die.
What's that going to do with Bob Rae?
What it has to do with Bob Rae is that he's a government figure who's embracing Salman Rushdie and saying he has the right to speak. Where was he when Victor Ostrovsky had this
I'll give you, I think, a better argument than that about hypocrisy, because that was one Israeli. I don't think the general view of Jews or of Israelis was to kill this man. Actually, Claire Hoy, who co-wrote the book, is on our Friday panel. If you want hypocrisy, Bob Rae spent a lot of public money infiltrating the pro-life movement and severely curtailed the freedom of expression of people who object to abortion, at the same time welcomed Salman Rushdie and hugged him. Now that was hypocrisy. Exactly. We're going to go to another line. Marcus, thank you for that call. Let's go to Len. I think it's Len. Lou, I'm sorry, Lou. Goodness me, my eyes. On line 1. I've reached 40 now. It falls apart. Lou on line 1. Welcome to you.
Oh, hello, sir.
Hello. Don't call me sir, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you sort of talked about my points already, but one of the things I wanted to bring up was the difference in Christian society. I mean, day in, day out, you hear things that are just as blasphemous, just as hurtful, just as hateful the standard joke about all priests being child molesters, and the whole culture is fairly anti-Christian. I mean, day in, day out, you hear things that are at least as hateful as were in the Satanic Verses in this culture, which is theoretically
more so, Lou. More so.
And we look beyond that. In fact, that's a sign that we consider ourselves mature and sophisticated and developed. There's certain elements, and if you're talking about a history of blasphemy, society progresses based on blasphemy. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I mean, Christianity was really a blasphemy on Judaism because they're saying, I was the Messiah. And then you could make a point that Islam is really a blasphemy on Christianity because the central tenet of Christianity is that Jesus was the Son of God and is God, and by them saying, no, he was just a prophet, you've just totally invalidated the whole thing.
Well, it's a good point you're making, because certainly Christian society up until I think the Inquisition existed until the 19th century. I could be wrong on that, but certainly an oppressive society in terms of disagreement until the late 17th century. But when you say it's enlightened and progressive to allow blasphemy, to allow the life of Brian, the Monty Python movie, I think is a sign of a certain liberation. But to allow, for example, and some people will be offended by me even saying this, but for allow in Winnipeg an illustration of a Catholic priest performing a perverse sexual act on Jesus Christ, is that a sign of progress? Or is that a sign of a decadence gone crazy?
No, but even with all of the portrayals of Jesus, he is never portrayed as deliberately deceiving people. No, not even in Life of Brian.
No, I'm sorry.
He's portrayed.
He's frequently described as that.
No, not deliberately and maliciously fooling people.
We
Yeah,
disagree.
no, but if you look at all of them, he's described as deluded or just plain strange, but he's not described as deliberately deceiving people. Whereas Muhammad, peace be upon him,
is a deception. So I mean, it's the same thing.
But really, do we have to say that all speech has to be productive, useful, happiness-inducing? I don't think so. A lot of positive things come out of things come out of discomfort, and I think the caller made that point. This is in North America, and this is part of the problem. We're embracing this idea that there's a free market of ideas, and that if we somehow curtail speech, what we're really doing is we're putting in some sort of intellectual protectionism. And what's the purpose of that?
Well, no one is saying, or no, I don't think anyone is saying that all speech has to be productive, positive, and joyful. But equally, are we actually saying that so much speech has to be negative, hateful, and destructive?
And deliberately provoking.
And isn't it rather civilized to say, we have in civil society certain lines physically we cannot go beyond?
If you're going to say that the fiction
Why not intellectually as well?
Can't be deliberately provoking, you're going to remove...
That's right. I mean, I'm regularly, every Christmas, like clockwork, there's usually a certain cover on a certain well-known magazine that raises the question, was Jesus a zealot, or was Jesus one of these things or one of those things? And it's usually not... McLean's is often the one I've seen. But in any event, whereas sometimes that's disturbed me, I have to feel that there are other people out there who might even look at this, and because of the negative impression they get from the article, might turn to look at such things as the teachings of Jesus, etc., and hopefully will see things in a positive way if they choose that as their religion. I think shock therapy or insults or hurtful speech can actually lead to positive things.
All right. But also okay, now got to go to a break. Who? 416-203-0302. That was shock therapy. 905-332-3131. We will get to all of you. The lines are very busy when we get back on Michael Coren Live. See ya. I've been told that on the Atkins diet, that hot dog, I could eat the meat substitute thing in the middle, but not the bun, not the bum. I'm learning a lot tonight. Let's go to Robert on line 3. Hello, Robert.
Yeah, good evening.
Hello there.
I also believe that in freedom of expression, I also believe that people have to take responsibility for what they say, for what they write, to a certain degree. Having said that, Christians have suffered a lot in terms of, what Christ was portrayed as. I take offense to that too. I would like to see some sort of balance. I mean, people have a right to say what they think, so long as it doesn't harm somebody else. I mean, these trash tabloids. I heard a lot of people, and people get sued for it and all that. There's no reason for it. It's idle chatter, and why do we have to indulge in such things?
How would you stop it, Robert? Would you want to stop it?
You can't legislate it, obviously.
You would legislate?
You can't.
Okay, but how, as you say, it is subjective. Who does legislating? At the moment, you have a legislature and a legislative establishment that would not be sympathetic to Christianity, my friend.
Yeah, but Michael, you do have publishers, as I know them, have certainly been chastened by this whole business. I mean, you're not going to see another book doing this again. And similarly, they look at every manuscript that comes in. So there's a self-censorship, and I think that process has been very effective. I mean, you just simply don't see from the major publishing houses anything that would be deemed offensive by the majority of people. Now we're sensitized to what the Muslim community is sensitive to.
But that is a peculiar. Actually, I would disagree. I think with Islam, because of the physical cowardice of the intellectual elite, they are very careful. But with Christianity, Paul, every other week it seems, or every other month, is another book saying the most absurd and normally facile and inaccurate things about Christianity. Most of them go totally unnoticed.
In what context, though?
Well, even
saying it's absolutely untrue, coming out with the most extraordinary untruths, nonsense. It goes on all the time.
Are you talking about historical works?
No, I'm talking both novels and historical works.
Well, even right
I
after
don't know of a work of fiction that deals with the life of Christ in an offensive way.
Oh,
I don't find the...
I'll have to send you a few.
Well, even right after the Satanic Verses came out, Madonna released a video where she was dancing through a cross-filled graveyard and kissing some statue of Christ, and he came alive and stuff like that. It's ridiculous stuff.
The eroticism, that's inherent in the images, I mean, it goes back to the medieval depictions of Christ on the cross.
No, but the thing is, I think there should be some respect. There should be some respect
But when
for
you say
other
there should be
people's...
some respect, what do you mean really? I mean, let's put this in terms of something practical. So if I write a book and you find it offensive to your religion or whatever it might be, what do you want to happen? What would you like government to do for you?
Well, I think that the government should get rid of anything that is hate literature, and this is definitely hate literature.
So pull it off the shelves.
Yes.
Do we do anything to the author?
No, with Ernst Zundel, he does not have the right to spout his lies. Why should Salman Rushdie have that right?
There's a huge difference.
Actually,
no, there isn't.
Actually, Ernst Zundel was found to have the right to spout his lies, but that's a separate issue.
Well, he shouldn't have the right to spout.
Okay. So you know, I'm not eager to hear what Ernst Zundel has to say either. However, as someone once said, you know, I'll defend to my death his right to say it. I know a lot of people won't be.
Who was also actually a rather nasty anti-Semite. But
oh, great.
But in civil society, we draw certain lines, certain things you're not allowed to do. And for the vast majority of people, for example, you can't go into someone's house and take their property. Now, for the thieving community, this is a severe infringement of liberty. But for the vast majority, it does make things a lot better. Would the world be... Now, on the Satanic Verses, to be honest, I'm in the middle. But when it comes to actually restricting certain speech, I think there is. The massive society can say, well, let's say, for example, child pornography. Would you allow that?
I think you absolutely have to take steps against the people who produce it, the people who distribute it.
Why?
And well, because obviously they're physically abusing and taking advantage of children.
Their freedom of expression.
Okay.
No, not at all. No, it isn't.
What about, say, 18-year-old women pretending to be children? Would you allow that pornography?
Absolutely.
This is where we disagree. Let's take another call. Let's go to Julie on line 5. Hello, Julie. Welcome to Michael Coren Live.
Hi, Michael and everyone on the panel. I just want to ask the Islamic people, so you really think that a lot of Jesus, do you? Do you respect Jesus?
Of course. He's a prophet of Islam as well.
On your Islamic show, they referred to Jesus as a jinn. When I looked that up, that means lower than the devils. That can come in any form, spiritual form, snake, animal, man, woman, and he's lower than the devils. I looked that up. That does not sound like
that's all
respect.
good and well, but
No,
the
that's
real
ridiculous. They
predominant view of Jesus in Islam is a great prophet of power. He's
Yeah.
one of the 4 prophets of power
And it is
who is
wrong.
given the highest estimation. So anyone who
Yeah.
tells you otherwise will not be able to back that
Yeah.
up.
Appreciate the call,
Actually
Julie.
endorse that. There's nothing whatsoever in the Quran that says anything remotely like that.
I appreciate the call, Jill. A little bit off topic. Remember, I have heard Christians say the most extraordinary things about Islam. There are twin solitudes here, mutual ignorance and sometimes some mutual antipathy. But thanks for the call. Let's go to Sina on line 2. Hello there, Sina.
How you doing, guys?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Listen, I'm Muslim, right? Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Sure.
I'm Muslim and I'm Persian, right? Not from Iran, but I am Persian. I do speak Persian. And I just want to make a few comments here. Yep. Basically, you said about the one caller, right? He said Islam is a blasphemy of Christianity. If you look at Christianity as a blasphemy of Judaism, one thing he failed to realize that Islam is not a sect or was never a direct a derivation of Christianity as Christianity was of Judaism.
I don't think he was saying that. What he was saying was certainly Christianity was regarded as blasphemy to Jews. I mean, that is why Christ was crucified. In that, Christianity says Jesus is the Son of God, died, resurrection. Islam contradicts that. Now, blasphemy, you could construe it as that, but certainly a contradiction, which some people would say was blasphemy.
Okay, I understand that. Next, regarding Salman Rushdie, I believe personally, right, and through my own studies, that I don't believe he should have got the death penalty. I don't even believe a fatwa should have been made. I think that if they had overlooked it or just disregarded it completely as the falsehood that it is, it would have been much easier, right? And it would have gone over much better within the global community. Personally, if you go back, if you go historically to the time of the Prophet and the predecessors of the Prophet, if someone was to say something like that to them, they would neither issue a fatwa, a death penalty on them, nor would they say anything. They might have even forgiven him. Okay,
so I've got to move on. Thank you for that call. Oh, Bosher, which is apparently okay in Farsi, so thank you for that call. Let's take another Abdul on line 7. Hello, Abdul. Abdul, are you there? I have to get back to you, Abdul. Thank you for the call. It was short but sweet. Let's go to Yasmin on line 8. Hello there, Yasmin.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I think Salman Rushdie, he really attacked Islam, and everyone on this earth, whether he or she is a Christian or Muslim, they should respect each other's religion, because religion is a very sensitive issue, and there should be a limitation in freedom of speech.
But Yasmin, let's talk about the practicalities of that.
Did you read the novel?
Did you read the novel, Yasmin?
Of it, because I wouldn't like to
Yasmin, did you read the novel?
Part of it.
You read part of it. Yeah. Yasmin, I, as a Christian, believe that Islam is wrong. Now, I love many Muslims, I regard them as close friends, but are you saying I don't have the right to say that? And equally, my guest here, as Muslims, believes that many of the claims of Christianity are not true.
There's a difference between blasphemy.
Well, let's ask Yasmin. Yasmin, do you think I have the right to say what I did and they have the right to say what they do?
Yeah, you shouldn't write a book.
Why not? What about if I wrote a book? There are many books written by Christians saying the arguments against Islam, and I've read pamphlets from Muslims saying the arguments against Christianity. Should they be banned?
You see, that's why there's so much hatred.
Yasmin, you're not listening to me. Should those books be banned?
I think so.
You do think so?
No, I don't think those
you
books
don't?
should be banned. Because that fosters good dialogue, and there's nothing wrong with dialogue between, so long as there's inherent respect underneath that. But if you're attacking someone just for the circus of provoking them, for the purpose of provoking them, that's ridiculous. There's no reason for that.
At the end of the day, Rukhsana, it's a sort of simple solution, like a television program. You turn it off.
No,
I mean, you're one of the few people who oppose the book who actually seems to have read it, but it must have been a painful process. I mean, it would have been easier to shut the book and read something else.
You know, I'm a peaceful person, but I read as much as I could. And after I finished reading it, if Salman Rushdie had been in front of me, I would have throttled him. I was that angry. And the thing is...
Well, funnily enough, we have Salman.
No, wait a minute. The thing about this book also is that it did not offend just the sensibilities of the people who practice Islam. It offended all Muslims, whether they're nominal Muslims, whether they're moderate, whether they're extremists, whatever.
Very few of them would have gone to the lengths that you did of reading it, right?
Got a break. 416-203-0302, 905-332-3131. Kim and Mike and Bashir and the rest of you and others. Get back to you as soon as we can. Michael Coren Live. Welcome back to Michael Coren Live on CDS. Let's go to Kim. We're talking about Salman Rushdie, who I have a feeling might even be watching right now. Salman, how are you? Do call in, please. Kim on line 1. Hi there, Kim.
Hi, good evening, Michael.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to say that I think that freedom of speech is something that is always going to continue, whether positive or negative. I don't think the government is about to step in and, put any laws on. I mean, abortion is allowed. Women are allowed to walk around topless now in our society. So I don't think they're going to step in ever. But I think that you have to not be shaken apart by it, whatever your faith is. For me, I'm a Christian. I think Jesus Christ was the one figure who was attacked, misunderstood more than anybody. But I don't let it shake me apart. Yes, it hurts. But I know that we're living in a day and age where these things are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, it hasn't shaken me apart at all. If anything, it made my determination stronger. And one thing I have to.
What's wrong with it?
Well, one thing I have to credit Salman Rushdie for doing is making me more determined than ever to become a writer and to write stuff that will fight him. I understand that he has freedom of speech. I understand that, and actually, I rely on that freedom of speech as well.
What you should do is write a novel with a character very much like Salman in it.
No, I wouldn't give him that. I wouldn't give him that praise. I wouldn't give him that legitimacy.
What about, didn't Rushdie say he'd become a Muslim?
Twice he did that.
Yeah,
he became a Muslim, then rejected it again, then became a Muslim again. And both times the fatwa was not removed. Therefore, he said Islam is of no use to me anymore.
Yeah.
He tried to get the fatwa lifted by accepting Islam.
But the thing is, who are you really defending? This guy, this Salman Rushdie, look at his history. He wrote a scathing book about Indira Gandhi. He referred to her mouth as a vagina. I mean, this is who you're defending? I mean, this is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are limits.
He's not the only person who doesn't like Indira Gandhi.
No, I don't like her either, but neither would I insult her in such a way.
Probably not the first person to call someone a vagina either.
But surely he has a right to... Shame and Midnight's Children, I thought, were quite powerful books. You have a right to be offensive to... And I know people say it's arbitrary, but there is a line we draw. And until that line, until that point, we have a right to cause offense to some. Otherwise, what sort of society would we have?
The thing is,
like you say, there is a logical limit.
What is the limit?
There's certain things I think that are inherent in people that you just know that maybe if
well, you see,
religion, I think religion, if you take it too far, I mean, Jesus, peace be upon him, has been. It's been on this continent. He has been for much longer than Islam has. So he has had the tar beaten out of him over and over and over again, and it's still going to continue. No, we just know where to stop it at. When it comes to the point where I've heard there are plays going on that Jesus was a homosexual and this kind of thing, and that's
so we know it when we see it.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
That's the problem, you see.
You fell into that one. I saw that one coming.
You see, it's undefinable. The line cannot be found. And because of that fact, and because people get infuriated when they read Salman Rushdie and decide to start writing and take a deeper seat in their faith, we cannot afford to decide that this is going to be the line, or that is going to be the line.
Also, it's not just Salman. It's people like Naguib Mahfouz, who was a very old man, stabbed in front of his house for writing the Children of Gabalawi. The fatwa was issued at the same time, in fact, as it was issued against Satanic Verses, against Children of Gabalawi, which is an Egyptian novelist. This is the great Egyptian novelist, which, through the lives of people in one alley in Cairo, tells the story of all three of the great monotheisms, and it was deemed offensive, and no one here would find it remotely offensive. It's merely the way it's seen by the ulama in Cairo and, of course, in Iran.
Well, freedom does have a context, a cultural context, but to return to this point about the free market of ideas. See, that I think is really the great myth. There is no free market of ideas because Salman Rushdie has access to every major important literary magazine and newspaper in the world. The average Muslim has access to none. Yeah. When it comes to Christianity, well, I think it is true. When it comes to Christianity, you can mock and abuse and insult Christianity in all the right publications in the right places. If you want to try and get a piece in saying that's not true, occasionally you will. But all of the big guns are with the forces who are against faith communities.
But Jesus and Muhammad didn't have access to the newspaper either. I mean,
well,
they started... Well, okay, that's what I'm saying. I mean, they started small and word spread by word of mouth, just as it could in any community. I don't think it's fair to say that someone has a leg up and therefore there's no free market of ideas. Certainly there's a free market. The very inequality makes it a free market.
I think the Roman Empire helped Christianity.
One of the callers mentioned how it would have been better for Muslims to stay low-key. And that's exactly the first response that Muslims kept to, was that let's keep this low-key. We don't want to give him added publicity. But when this book, this blasphemous, disgusting book, was put up for the highest prize of literature in England, the Booker Prize. When it was nominated for the Booker Prize, that's when all hell broke loose.
Well, I think, see, this is. I'm glad you said that, because I think the issue here that was taken up by PEN and various other organisations is that this is a great book. It's not just any book. It is an exceptionally good book. Certainly one of the best books of the century.
Well, have you heard of the 10-page club, the number 10 club? That's the club of people who cannot get past the 10th page of Satanic Verses. And you're calling it a
probably
beautiful
have trouble
book.
with Ulysses too.
But Paul, you're not saying that quality dictates whether a book should be allowed or not in terms of its content.
No, but I think that that's a factor that nobody's liked to raise. That had it been a much lesser book, I mean, it wouldn't have been a much lesser issue, but it just coincided. The two factors meeting makes much greater impact.
Well, that raises it. And that it was controversial. The fatwa, you're saying, those two factors?
Yes.
What about? I mean, this was a good point, though, Paul. You just said, in a sense, that it was a well-written book. What about that? Independently of the message, it was told in a certain way, and if there is going to be something to be learned, sometimes what is learned is not what is said, but how it's said.
No, but we're acting as if the book is an attack on Islam. The book is not an attack on Islam. It's a novel, a very intricate novel about the lives of two people intertwined.
Well, you're not a Muslim. If a faithful Muslim perceives it as an attack, surely it is an attack.
Yeah, the problem
I
is...
have many friends who are Muslims, and I know some of them are deeply offended by it. Most of them are deeply offended by the idea of it. Most of them have not bothered to read it and wouldn't read it because they don't want to upset themselves.
Let's squeeze another call here. Let's go to Mike on line 5. Hi there, Mike.
Hi everybody.
Hi.
I want to recount an incident that happened to me at Mass a couple of months ago. I'm Roman Catholic, and during Mass, two teenagers stood behind me and gave a running atheistic commentary on the Mass and made lewd comments about Jesus Christ in an audible tone. As usual, Christian apathy was highly present. No one said anything to these two, and finally I turned around and told them to shut up or leave, and about 10 minutes later, after they were silent, they did get up and leave. So I guess reading your article the other day in the Sun, once again, I could see it really comes true. Christians tolerate so much against Jesus Christ more than, say, Muslims or Islamics tolerate what Salman Rushdie had to say.
No, I'm afraid, coming from the Roman Catholic Church, that burnt so many people at the stake, I find it really laughable.
No, but there's no excuse for that either. There's no respect there.
The Roman Catholic Church burnt at the stake people at a time, in a period in history when every state, every society, every organization used that method of killing people. It was a very unpleasant time. Mike, I think maybe the better thing to do would have said to them, okay, turn around and said, this happens to be a certain ceremony, I think you should be quiet in. Would you like to debate me on the issues afterwards, outside? We can, in a civilized way, discuss it. Very Mars Hill, and show them that they were being ludicrous and immature and that you were absolutely right in most ways anyway. Thank you for that call. Wish we had more time. Maybe before too long we will have more time on this show. Michael Coren, Live CDS, back in a couple of moments.
No.
Welcome back to Michael Coren Live on CBS.
I'm just joking.
That was a joke. Well, I'm not going to get into what we were talking about. Thank you very much to Rukhsana Khan and Anwar Syed and Paul William Roberts and Paul McKeever. Tomorrow we have That Was the Week That Was panel. We'll be talking about Mel Lastman and his wife and Tory kids on the bus and stuff like that. Take care. God bless. Goodbye. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Bye now.